and welcome to our daily news program coming to you here on Canal Algérie and in today's major headlines. Reducing the earthquake risks at the center of an international forum during which the stress is put on integrating new technologies in building to protect the population. The National Social Insurances Fund for salaried employees wins the first special award of the International Social Security Association for its project on e-medical records. The Sahrawi people celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Polisario Front creation, a major event for the last colony in Africa, still in quest of freedom and independence. And while drug trafficking remains a big challenge for Africa, Morocco is becoming a real hub for this activity, representing the backbone of the Makhzen regime. Good evening and welcome back. First of all, the International Forum on Earthquakes and Preventive Measures held here in Algiers wound up with important recommendations likely to reduce the major risks of this natural disaster, an event which coincides with the 20th anniversary of Bombarda's devastating earthquake. Melissa Kebash sums up the major recommendations of this forum.
4 workshops were held on the last day of this forum, where important recommendations related to the reduction of earthquake risks were adopted. With regard to seismic probabilities and zones, the recommendations centered on developing seismic movement scenarios for urban centers, continuing studies related to regional seismic potentials in order to improve and update earthquake classification maps across the north of the country. Finally, enriching earthquake zone studies. The second workshop pertained to the earthquake resistance engineering, where the use of seismic insulators was indicated as structural solutions for strategic buildings. Design a specification book of requirements for the rehabilitation of buildings while adopting a national technical law for buildings in use. As for the third one, indicated the importance of exploiting the results of scientific research, especially in the field of major risks, establishing a data bank on dangers, review the insurance law for major risks, upgrade the activity of the National Organization of Earthquake Contracting Engineering. Finally, the fourth one highlighted the preparations of scenarios for field maneuvers in line with the local and regional characteristics of managing disasters, enhance communication and coordination between specialized actors to achieve effective management of disasters, establish local and regional cooperation networks to facilitate the exchange of information and expertise on how to deal with national disaster of earthquake.
The installation of the new CEO of the Research in Astronomy, Astrophysics and Geophysics Center by the Interior Minister was a good opportunity to hold an ad hoc conference meant to provide further details on the center's activities. Ines Kilo reports.
The Research in Astronomy, Astrophysics and Geophysics Center has a new CEO, Hamoud Beljoudi, a well-known figure at the center since the seismology expert joined the structure in 1998. He has held several positions, notably that of Division Director. The new director was installed by the Minister of Interior.
Nous, parmi les priorités que nous avons inscrites récemment, c'est densifier le réseau. Parce que avec 80 stations, ça reste insuffisant.
One of the priorities that we have recently set is to increase the density of the network, because even with 80 stations, it is not enough to monitor such a vast territory. We will have to think of another strategy, which is to move on to early seismic warning, which will allow us to be connected with other infrastructures such as dams, nuclear stations, electricity plants. And as soon as we see that there is an earthquake, we will do our best to cut off all the functioning of these stations to avoid as much damage as we can.
Le fonctionnement de ces stations-là pour bien sûr préserver et pour ne pas avoir beaucoup de dégâts.
Indeed, the Bombardas earthquake of May 21, 2003, measuring 6.8, is one of the most devastating natural disasters witnessed in modern Algeria. 20 years have passed since then. In the meantime, the CRAG has set up a digital seismological monitoring and warning network of international standards with expertise worthy of the major research centers in seismology.
We have a system which is up to the international standards and the most recent in the field of science in seismology. We can have the localization of the magnitude in the first 20 seconds. Our work after is to convey the information to the service concerned, civil defense, security and the Ministry of Interior in order to provide first aid if necessary.
After the installation ceremony, the Ministry of Interior inspected the different services and structures of the CRAG and listened to the explanations provided by their managers. For Brahim Murad, it is imperative that the CRAG makes a qualitative contribution to the socio-economic dynamics that the country is experiencing.
Concerning this field of seismology, there is a new law that will be discussed during the next Council of Ministers to be operational in the near future.
Algeria is an earthquake-prone country and has acquired over the years the technology and expertise required for better dealing with these natural disasters.
In another story, the National Social Insurances Fund for salaried employees won the first special award of the International Social Security Association for its e-medical records project. The National Fund for Paid Leave and Unemployment obtained a merit certificate as well for its refunds services related to the heat wave and a certificate for its service of distant declaration of the status of processing payment schedule and appeal requests. For its part, the National Pension Fund received as well a certificate for its digital services, and a merit certificate was also awarded to the National Social Security Fund for the non-salaried employees for its two projects relating to the decision-making information system and the portal for monitoring the inspectors' activities, and a certificate for its service dedicated to the e-management of documents. To Geneva now, where the health minister put forward Algeria's efforts concerning the development and modernization of the health sector in terms of the mobilized means, policy adopted, free care or the digitization of the sector. Abdelhak Sayhi chaired the proceedings of the 59th session of the Arab Health Ministers' Council held on the sidelines of the 76th session of the World Health Assembly. This occasion focused on the Arab joint cooperation with the aim to guarantee health security in the Arab world. Algeria is to host today an international forum on the Palestinian Nakba or catastrophe. To this effect, a Palestinian delegation representing different factions and figures arrived on Sunday to Algiers to take part in this event. In another context, the President of the Council of the Nation received on Sunday the President of the Zambian Parliament, Nelly Butete Kashumba Muti, and the delegation accompanying her. The two parties discussed the ways and means to consolidate parliamentary cooperation between the two countries. Saleh Goudil recalled the African orientation of the Algerian foreign policy, which knows an unprecedented dynamic under the aegis of the President of the Republic. The latter has not ceased to call for the strengthening of inter-African cooperation and the establishment of peace in the continent. The President of the Zambian Parliament then visited the various departments of the Council of the Nation, where she received explanations on the work of the Senate members and the debates on the various national and international issues. Still with the President of the Zambian Parliament, Nelly Butete Kashumba Muti, and the delegation accompanying her, who were equally received on Sunday by the President of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, an occasion for the two parties to discuss the means to boost parliamentary cooperation. The President of the National People's Assembly, Brahim Boughali, also received on Sunday the Chinese People's Friendship Group with the African peoples. The two parties tackled the ways and the means to strengthen bilateral cooperation. In another story, the Minister of Energy and Mines received the Senegalese Minister of Agriculture and Rural Equipment, Ali Nguyen Ndiaye. This visit is part of the 21st edition of the International Fair for Agriculture, Livestock and Agro-Industry, Sibsafilaha, due to be held in Algeria from the 22nd until the 25th of the current month. The meeting was an opportunity to review cooperation in electricity production and distribution. The Nigerian delegation of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies continues its visit to our country. They went to Gardaya province, where they inspected several infrastructures related to the industrial development and renewable energy sector in Gardaya. Further details with Najah Tayar.
With a capacity of 1.1 megawatts, the solar power plant was visited by the Nigerian delegation. The state has 6,000 photovoltaic panels. This visit was the opportunity for the Nigerian delegation to inquire about the construction work, which will continue until 2035. I must say that we were warmly welcomed in Gardaya. We visited several infrastructures such as Alpha Pipe and the solar power plant. We benefited enormously from the Algerian experience in the field. The national company Alpha Pipe has extensive potentialities in the sector of the hydrocarbon transport. We were very honored by the visit of the Nigerian delegation. We inspected together several facilities and projects. This visit was a discovery of Gardaya work prospects for a fruitful cooperation between Algeria and Nigeria.
Abroad, the military operations continue along the Wall of Shame in Western Sahara. Units of the Sahrawi Liberation Army carried out new attacks against forces of the Moroccan occupation in the sector of Amgala. The Sahrawi people celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Polisario Front creation. Our special envoy to the Sahrawi refugee camps, Walid Yousfi, covered the commemoration of this highly important event. This commentary by Ines Kilo.
Around 20 international media outlets have traveled to the Auserd refugee camps to cover the 50th anniversary of the Polisario Front, an opportunity for the Sahrawi people to highlight their cause on the international scene.
This occasion allows us to get the message across and even to cover and give the true version of what is going on here.
Je suis là aujourd'hui à l'occasion du 50e anniversaire de la création de Polisario.
I'm here today on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the creation of Polisario. It's an opportunity to be closer to this just cause. I'm preparing a documentary about their social and cultural situation.
La situation sociale et culturelle.
These celebrations were marked by a heavy international presence from the press to NGOs, with several organizations traveling from Europe and Latin America to express their support for Western Sahara.
We are very happy to be here on the occasion of the celebrations. We have always been in solidarity with the Sahrawi cause. We came here several times a year to accompany the Sahrawi people and help them as much as we can. Media should be much more interested in this cause and these people who have always respected diplomacy and the voice of peace to win their case.
A cause that is increasingly present in the international scene. The Sahrawi people remain determined to continue their fight to self-determination and liberate the lost colony in the African continent.
The Sahrawi authorities, backed by their people, managed to establish a strong state despite the difficulties and obstacles imposed by the occupier. But their main objective is to snatch freedom and independence. Story by Melissa Kabash.
For the past decades, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic deployed immense efforts to establish a strong state, supported by all democratic institutions, which contributed to the preservation of this nation and its just cause, despite several years of exile, which failed to end the fight of the Sahrawi people.
We did our best so that the Sadr remains an independent state thanks to its institutions that work day and night to serve its people. This parade shows the official image of the Sadr and all its institutions. Thanks to the combat of the Polisario Front, the people succeeded in building a strong and unified republic despite the barriers imposed by the occupier.
Faced by the Makhzen regime's attempts to put an end to their fight and break down their determination, the Sahrawi people remain attached to their culture and traditions engraved in their identity.
50 years of resistance and sacrifices are telling evidence that Morocco can't bury the history of the Sahrawi people. Our traditions are another way to combat the occupier and preserve our heritage. The Sahrawi society is strongly attached to its traditions that the occupier tried with all means to eradicate.
The Sahrawi people deployed all means to preserve their cultural heritage and pass it down from generation to another, while continuing their fight until snatching their legitimate rights.
In a different context, both Algeria and Africa are fighting against a real challenge, that is the Moroccan drug trafficking. Hundreds of attempts are thwarted on a daily basis as Morocco has become an international cannabis trafficking hub, making this substance one of the most important sources of its economy. Story by Najah Tayar.
Ranked as the world's largest cannabis producer, Morocco has witnessed the turning of this illicit activity into a lucrative industry that fuels its economy under the pretext of medical, cosmetic and industrial uses. The Makhzen legalized its cultivation, making drug trafficking one of its main income sources as well as a way to feed its large-scale corruption network. The Makhzen is relying more and more on this activity to generate revenue and to diffuse tension in the reef, particularly in the provinces of Al Hoceima, Chefchaouen and Taounat, the regions that are overpopulated and subject to extreme poverty and who depend on cannabis. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Morocco is seen as a global hub for drug and cannabis trafficking, and the figures are alarming. More than 700 tons of cannabis are produced each year, representing an estimated value of $23 billion. The cannabis represents the most important source of currency in Morocco's economy. The Interpol estimates that approximately 90% of the cannabis seized in Europe comes from the Moroccan reef. The U.S. State Department was also concerned about the extent of money laundering in Morocco from cannabis trafficking and the transit of cocaine destined for Europe. In one of its reports on this phenomenon, he estimated drug and cannabis trafficking at nearly 23% of Morocco's national production.
And with that, our today's news comes to a close. Thank you for joining us and goodbye.